They labeled me defective during toteminavida, and by 19, after 3 physicians examined my frail form and delivered their judgment, I began accepting it as truth. I'm Thomas Beaumont Callahan, 19 years old, inhabiting a body that's perpetually betrayed me. A compilation of defects etched into bone and muscle that never developed correctly. My arrival was premature in January 1840, entering the world 2 months early amid Mississippi's coldest winter in decades. Sarah Beaumont Callahan, my mother, entered labor unexpectedly during a dinner party my father hosted for visiting judges and planters. Mama Ruth, an enslaved woman who delivered half the county's white babies and served as midwife, examined me and immediately shook her head. Judge Callahan, she informed my father, this infant won't survive until morning. He's excessively tiny. His breathing's too shallow. Best prepare your wife for grief. But my mother, consumed by fever and exhaustion, refused this prognosis. He'll live, she whispered, pressing my miniature form against her chest. I'm certain of it. His heartbeat's faint, but it's struggling. She proved correct. I endured that initial night, then another, then countless more. Yet survival differs from flourishing. At 1 month, I weighed scarcely 6 pounds. At 6 months, I couldn't raise my head independently. At 1 year, when other infants stood and some even walked, I could barely maintain a seated position. The physicians my father summoned from Natchez, Vicksburg, even distant New Orleans, all concurred. Premature delivery had impeded my growth permanently. Yellow fever claimed my mother when I was 6 during Mississippi's 1846 epidemic. I recall her reclining in bed, complexion resembling aged parchment, eyes yellowed and unfocused. She summoned me the day before her death. Thomas, she breathed, voice nearly inaudible. Throughout your life, obstacles will confront you. People will undervalue you, pity you, disregard you entirely. Yet you possess something exceeding physical strength. Your intellect, your spirit, your essence. Never permit anyone to diminish your wholeness. She passed the following morning. I grasped her meaning only years afterward. Judge William Callahan, my father, embodied everything I wasn't. Towering 6 feet, broad-shouldered, possessing a voice that could silence courtrooms instantly. He'd accumulated wealth independently, beginning as an impoverished Alabama attorney, marrying into the modest Beaumont plantation, then through calculated investments and strategic land purchases, expanded those original 800 acres into an 8,000-acre cotton domain. Callahan Plantation occupied elevated bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River, situated 15 miles south of Natchez in territory considered the South's most fertile ground. The primary residence was a Greek Revival structure my father constructed in 1835. 2 stories of white, painted brick featuring massive Doric columns, spacious galleries on both levels, and tall windows capturing river breezes. Inside, crystal chandeliers suspended from 15-foot ceilings, imported furniture occupied rooms spacious enough for 100 guest balls, and Persian rugs covered polished heart, pine floors. Behind the main house stretched the operational plantation cotton gin, blacksmith forge, carpentry workshop, smokehouse, laundry facility, kitchen building, overseer's residence, and beyond all that, the quarters. Rows of modest cabins housing 300 enslaved individuals in conditions starkly contrasting the mansion's opulence. I matured surrounded by extreme wealth constructed upon extreme brutality. Though childhood obscured full comprehension, various tutors my father employed instructed me at home. My frailty prevented traditional schooling, and boarding at academies where other planters' sons studied was impossible. Instead, I absorbed Greek and Latin, mathematics and literature, history and philosophy within my father's library's tranquility. By 19, I measured 5 feet 2 inches, appropriate for a boy entering puberty rather than a young man. My frame remained slight, approximately 110 pounds, with bone so delicate Dr. Harrison once remarked my skeleton resembled a bird's. My chest exhibited slight concavity, a condition physicians termed pectus excavatum from improperly formed ribs. My hands displayed continuous fine tremors, making simple tasks like writing or holding a teacup require intense concentration. My vision necessitated thick spectacles magnifying my pale blue eyes almost comically. Without them, everything blurred. My voice never fully matured, lingering in that awkward territory between childhood and manhood. My fine light brown hair already thinned despite youth. My nearly translucent skin revealed every underlying vein. Yet the worst aspect, the element ultimately determining my destiny, was my total absence of masculine development. Facial hair was non-existent beyond a few wispy upper lip strands I shaved more hopefully than necessarily. My body remained hairless, smooth as a child's, and medical examinations confirmed what my father suspected. My reproductive organs were severely underdeveloped, rendering me sterile. These examinations commenced shortly after my 18th birthday in January 1858. My father arranged an introduction to Martha Henderson, daughter of a wealthy Port Gibson planter. The encounter proved disastrous. Martha glanced at me and couldn't conceal her revulsion. She maintained polite conversation exactly 15 minutes before pleading headache and departing. I overheard her telling her mother as they left, "Father can't genuinely expect me to marry that child. He appears as though he'd fracture on our wedding night." Following that humiliation, my father summoned Dr. Harrison. Samuel Harrison, M.D., was Natchez' most distinguished physician, Yale, educated and specializing in what he termed matters of masculine health and heredity. He arrived at Callahan Plantation one humid February morning, carrying a leather medical bag and clinical detachment. My father left us alone in his study. Dr. Harrison instructed me to undress completely, then conducted the most degrading hour of my existence. He measured height, weight, chest circumference, limb length. He scrutinized every body inch, recording observations in a small leather journal. He focused particularly on my groin, manipulating my underdeveloped testicles while commenting on their size and consistency. "Significantly subnormal," he murmured, writing, "prepubertal appearance and texture." Upon finishing, he had me dress and summoned my father. "Judge Callahan," Dr. Harrison began, settling into a leather chair, "I'll be direct. Your son's condition exceeds constitutional frailty. He suffers from hypogonadism, a failure of proper sexual organ development, likely resulting from his premature birth and subsequent developmental delays." My father's expression remained unchanged. What implications does this hold for his future, for marriage, for family line continuation? Dr. Harrison glanced at me, then returned to my father. "Judge, your son producing offspring is virtually impossible. Testicular tissue proves insufficient for spermatogenesis, viable seed production. His hormone production is clearly deficient, evidenced by absent secondary sexual characteristics. Even marriage might present consummation difficulties, and conception would be, in my professional judgment, impossible." The words suspended in air like a death pronouncement. Impossible. My father remained silent considerably. "You're absolutely certain?" "As certain as medical science permits. I've encountered perhaps a dozen similar cases throughout my career. None produced children." "I understand. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Payment will be sent to your office." Following the doctor's departure, my father poured himself substantial bourbon and stared riverward through the window. "Father, I apologize," I offered quietly. He didn't turn. "For what?" "Premature birth, chronic sickliness, being..." He trailed off, drinking deeply. "Not your fault, Thomas, yet this remains our reality." But one opinion wasn't sufficient for my father. Dr. Jeremiah Blackwood arrived from Vicksburg a week later. Younger than Harrison, he examined me more aggressively, handling my body roughly. His conclusion matched severe hypogonadism with associated sterility. Permanent, untreatable condition. The third physician traveled from New Orleans in March. Dr. Antoine Mérieux, a Creole doctor trained in Paris, spoke with heavy French accent. He proved gentlest, apologizing for the examination's invasive nature. Yet his verdict echoed the others. "Just we dis, but your son cannot father children. Development arrested permanently. Nothing can be done." 3 physicians, 3 examinations, 3 identical conclusions. Thomas Beaumont Callahan was sterile, unfit for breeding, incapable of continuing the family line. This intelligence permeated Mississippi's planter society with the thoroughness of gossip among people whose primary occupation was discussing others' affairs. My father made no secrecy effort. What purpose would it serve? Any prospective wife needed this knowledge. Better forthrightness than subsequent recriminations. The Hendersons immediately withdrew their daughter. The Rutherfords, previously interested in introducing their younger daughter, sent polite declination. The Prestons, Montgomerys, Fairfaxes, all prominent families who might have overlooked physical frailty for Callahan fortune, suddenly discovered their daughters unsuitable or previously promised. Yet private rejections weren't the sole injuries. Public comments inflicted deeper wounds. I overheard Mrs. Harrison at church in April. Such a pity regarding the Callahan boy. The judge possesses all that wealth without proper hair. Makes one question the purpose. At a May dinner party my father hosted, one guest, intoxicated on my father's fine whiskey, announced loudly enough for hallway hearing, "Natcher's way, isn't it? The weak ones shouldn't reproduce, maintain stock quality." A visiting Louisiana planter examining a horse my father was selling commented, "Fine animal. Strong lines, good conformation, proven stud. Unlike that son of yours, eh? Sometimes breeding simply fails." Each remark was a blade, yet I'd mastered showing no reaction. What purpose would it serve? According to their understanding, they were correct. I represented defective merchandise, failed investment, dead-end branch on the family tree. During spring and summer 1858, my father retreated inward. He maintained plantation operations efficiently, continued county judge duties, attended social functions. Yet at home, increasing distance prevailed. Long hours in his study with Bourbon and legal documents, working on matters he wouldn't discuss with me. I retreated into literature. My father's library contained over 2,000 volumes, most I'd consumed by 19. Philosophy and poetry particularly captivated me. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Keats, Shelley, Byron. I discovered solace in words from men who'd contemplated suffering, mortality, the human condition. I also began exploring books my father didn't realize existed in his library, volumes previous owners left behind or accidentally included in estate sale lots. These included abolitionist literature, technically illegal in Mississippi, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, published 1845, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, published 1852, essays by William Lloyd Garrison and other Northern abolitionists. I read these prohibited works late at night when the house was silent, and they disturbed me profoundly. I'd grown up accepting slavery as natural, divinely ordained, mutually beneficial. The notion that enslaved people were inferior, childlike, incapable of self-governance. This represented universal belief among everyone surrounding me. Yet these books presented alternative perspectives. Frederick Douglass wrote with intelligence and eloquence, matching any white author I'd encountered. He described slavery's brutality, whippings, family separations, sexual exploitation, the psychological torture of being treated as property. Uncle Tom's Cabin, though fiction, depicted slavery's horrors with devastating emotional impact. I began noticing previously ignored details, field hands' scarred backs, the way enslaved people's expressions went blank and subservient when white people approached, children who suspiciously resembled my father's overseers, women who disappeared from fields for months, then returned without the babies they'd obviously carried. Yet I did nothing with these observations. I remained too weak, too dependent, too compromised by personal comfort to challenge the system. I convinced myself I differed from other slaveholders, that I treated enslaved people more kindly. But kindness doesn't diminish slavery's evil. It merely eases the enslaver's conscience regarding participation. In September 1858, my father attempted another bride search. He contacted families beyond Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia. He lowered standards, approaching families of lesser wealth and social standing. He offered increasingly generous dowries, guaranteeing any woman marrying me would lack nothing and live luxuriously. Responses followed a theme. "Thank you for your generous proposal, but Caroline is already promised elsewhere. We appreciate your interest, but we don't consider this a suitable match. While your son seems a fine young man, we're seeking different prospects." That final response proved particularly cruel. Different prospects politely meant a husband capable of producing grandchildren. By December 1858, my father had abandoned efforts. We dined together silently most evenings, silver against china, the sole sounds in the enormous dining room. Occasionally he'd regard me with an expression I couldn't decipher, certainly disappointment, but also something resembling desperation. The explosion occurred in March 1859. Late evening, my father had consumed more alcohol than usual. I was reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations in the library when he burst in. "Thomas, we need conversation?" I set down the book. "Yes, father." He seated himself heavily, bourbon sloshing in his glass. "I'm 58 years old. I could die tomorrow or survive another 20 years, but eventually death comes. And when it does, what becomes of all this?" He gestured vaguely at the room, the house, the surrounding plantation. "The estate would pass to our nearest male relative, I suppose. Cousin Robert in Alabama." Cousin Robert, my father spat, is an incompetent drunkard who's lost 2 small plantations to bad debt. He'd sell this place within a year and drink away the proceeds. Everything I've constructed, everything my father constructed before me, would vanish. "I'm sorry, father. I recognize this isn't the situation you desired. Sorry doesn't resolve problems." He stood, beginning to pace. 18 months. I've attempted everything. 18 months searching for a wife who'd accept you despite your condition. No one will. No one wants a husband incapable of producing heirs. That's reality. I know. So I've needed creative thinking. Very creative thinking about solutions pushing conventional boundaries. Something in his tone unsettled me. "What do you mean?" He stopped pacing, meeting my eyes directly. "I'm giving you to Delilah." I stared, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry. What? Delilah?" The field hand. "I'm giving her to you as companion. Your wife in practical terms." The words made no sense. "Father, you can't possibly be suggesting." "I'm not suggesting. I'm informing you what will occur." His voice hardened, the courtroom sentencing voice. "No white woman will marry you. That's established fact. Yet the Callahan line requires continuation. The plantation needs heirs, even unconventional ones." The full horror of his proposal struck me. "You want me to, with an enslaved woman? Father, even if I could, which physicians confirm I can't, that's not how inheritance functions. A child from an enslaved woman wouldn't be your heir. They'd be property, unless I free them, unless I legally adopt them, unless I structure my will very carefully. As a judge and lawyer, I'm uniquely qualified for this. This is insane. This is necessary." He sat again, leaning forward. "Thomas, listen. I've examined this from every angle. You can't produce children. Physicians were unanimous. Yet children can be produced on your behalf. Delilah possesses strength, health, intelligence. I'll arrange breeding with a suitable male from another plantation. Strong stock, proven fertility, good physical specimens. The children she bears will legally be mine through documentation I'll create. Upon my death, I'll will them to you, along with papers freeing them and establishing them as your adopted heirs. They'll inherit everything. You're discussing breeding human beings like livestock. I'm discussing ensuring this family's and this plantation's continuation. Is it unconventional? Yes. Legally complex? Absolutely. Yet it's possible and solves our problem. It's not my problem." I stood, trembling more intensely than usual. "Father, what you're describing is evil. You intend to use a woman's body without consent to produce children manipulated through legal fictions into becoming heirs. You're treating people like breeding stock, like animals. They are animals in law's eyes." His voice rose, matching mine. "Thomas, I'm aware you've been reading abolitionist literature. Yes, I know about it. I'm not blind. You've filled your head with sentimental nonsense about slaves' humanity. But legal reality is their property. I own Delilah identically to owning this house or that chair. I'm choosing to use her solving a problem. And what does Delilah think about this? She'll do as instructed. She's property, Thomas. Her opinion is irrelevant." Something within me fractured. I'd spent my entire life deferring to my father's authority, accepting his decisions. attempting compensation for being a disappointing son. But this exceeded tolerance. No. The word emerged quietly yet firmly. My father blinked. What did you say? I said no. I won't participate in this. If you implement this obscene breeding scheme, you'll do so without my involvement or cooperation. You ungrateful. He rose, face reddening. Do you comprehend what I've sacrificed for you? The opportunities forfeited because I needed to focus on solutions for my defective son. The social embarrassment of having an heir incapable of performing the one basic function required. I didn't request birth into this condition. I didn't request a son ending the family line. He hurled his glass, shattering against the fireplace. I'm attempting solution finding, and you're rejecting it from misguided moral superiority learned from abolitionist propaganda. It's not propaganda to assert that people shouldn't be bred like animals. Father, if you can't recognize the evil in your proposal, get out. Leave my sight. I exited the library, heart pounding, entire body trembling. I reached my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed, attempting to process what had transpired. My father intended to use an enslaved woman as breeding stock to produce heirs, legally manipulated into inheriting his plantation. And he perceived nothing wrong with this plan. Indeed, he considered it a clever solution to an intractable problem. Sleep proved impossible that night. I continuously contemplated Delilah, the life my father was designing without her knowledge or consent. I'd observed her around the plantation. She was impossible to miss. Delilah was 24, nearly 6 feet tall, powerfully built from years of fieldwork. She possessed polished mahogany skin, high cheekbones, and eyes containing intelligence she'd learned to conceal around white people. Overseers called her a prime field hand, strong enough picking 300 pounds cotton daily, healthy enough laboring through brutal Mississippi summers without collapse. I'd heard overseers discussing her, that Delilah's worth 3 regular hands, never ill, never complains, works mechanically. Yet I'd also overheard darker comments. Shame wasting breeding potential like that on fieldwork. A woman built like that should produce babies annually. Now my father intended ensuring that breeding potential was exploited. I couldn't permit this. Yet what action was possible? I possessed no plantation authority. I was 19, physically weak, financially dependent. I couldn't free Delilah. I didn't own her. Even if I did, legal processes were complex and expensive. I couldn't facilitate escape. I barely knew her, had no underground railroad connections, wouldn't know initial steps arranging fugitive slave escape. Yet doing nothing was impossible. The following morning, still trembling from confrontation and sleep deprivation, I reached a decision. I needed to warn Delilah, minimally. She deserved awareness of my father's plans. The quarters lay a quarter-mile behind the main house, down a dirt path lined with ancient oak trees I'd rarely visited previously. Improper for the master's son to mingle with enslaved people. The few visits occurred during Christmas distributions, when my father distributed extra rations and cheap gifts to the people enabling his wealth. The quarters comprised 20 small cabins arranged in 2 rows. Each housed 6 to 10 people in conditions starkly contrasting the mansion's luxury. Rough pine plank walls, dirt floors, single fireplace for heating and cooking, 1 or 2 small windows with wooden shutters but no glass. Mid-morning Tuesday meant most field hands were working. Only few people remained, an elderly woman tending cook fire, some children too young for work, a man with bandaged legs sitting on cabin steps. They all stared as I passed. White people rarely visited quarters, except the overseer on rounds or my father on inspection tours. A frail young white man in fine clothes walking alone through the quarters must have appeared completely incongruous. I asked the elderly woman which cabin belonged to Delilah. She regarded me suspiciously. "Why are you asking after Delilah, young master? I need to speak with her. It's important. She out in fields. Won't return till sundown. I'll wait." The woman's eyes narrowed, but she pointed to the 3rd cabin in the 2nd row. "That's hers. But I don't know what business you got with her." I spent the day in uncomfortable limbo. I couldn't return to the main house. My father and I weren't speaking. I couldn't wait in Delilah's cabin. That would be completely inappropriate. So I walked plantation grounds, avoiding areas where my father might be, attempting to formulate what I'd say to Delilah upon her return. Sunset revealed returning field hands. They walked in loose groups, exhausted from 10 hours labor under March sun. Delilah was easily identifiable, head taller than most, walking with straight, back posture despite obvious fatigue. She saw me standing near her cabin and stopped. Master Thomas. Other field hands stared, whispering, highly unusual. The master's son waiting at a slave cabin. Delilah, I need to speak with you. It's important. May I? I gestured toward her cabin. She glanced at other workers, then slowly nodded. Yes, sir. We entered the cabin. Single room, approximately 12 by 14 feet, with dirt floor and rough plank walls. A fireplace occupied one wall, cold now in the mild evening. 3 rough wooden pallets served as beds. Delilah shared the cabin with 2 laundry workers. There was a crude table, 2 stools, few cooking pots, some clothing hanging from wall pegs. This was where 3 human beings existed. The contrast between this and my mansion bedroom, with its 4-poster bed, imported furniture, soft carpets, walls lined with bookshelves, was staggering. Delilah stood uncertainly in the room's center. Is something wrong, Master Thomas? Where to begin? How does one communicate that your father plans to use someone as breeding stock? Delilah, I need to inform you about something my father is planning, something involving you. Her expression became carefully neutral. The look enslaved people adopted when dealing with potentially dangerous white people. Yes, sir. I revealed everything: my sterility, my father's desperation for heirs, his plan to breed her with a male slave from another plantation, the legal machinations transforming her children into my adopted heirs. As I spoke, I watched her face cycle through shock, horror, then wary resignation. When I finished, she remained silent considerably. Finally, so the judge plans to use me like a broodmare? Yes, and I wanted you to know. I wanted to warn you so you could, I don't know, prepare yourself. Resist if possible. Though I recognize that's nearly impossible given your situation. Why? She looked directly at me now, fear temporarily overcome by curiosity. Why are you telling me this, Master Thomas? Why do you care what happens to me? A fair question. Why did I care? I'd lived my entire life benefiting from slavery without questioning it. I'd worn clothes made by enslaved people, eaten food prepared by enslaved people, lived in luxury built on enslaved labor. What made this different? Because what my father is planning is wrong. Not merely abstractly morally wrong, but practically, specifically wrong in a way I can no longer ignore. You think slavery's wrong? Skepticism colored her voice. I struggled for words. I think I've been reading too much lately. Books making me question things I've always accepted. And when my father outlined his plan, when he discussed you like livestock to be bred for his purposes, something within me couldn't accept it. But you still own slaves. Your father still owns me. Yes. And I have no answer for that contradiction. I'm complicit in a system I'm beginning to understand as evil. Yet I couldn't let my father's plan proceed without at least warning you. Delilah seated herself on one stool, suddenly appearing exhausted. Master Thomas, I appreciate the warning, truly. Yet what am I supposed to do with this information? I can't refuse. If the judge orders me bred, I'll be bred. If I resist, I'll be whipped until compliance, or sold to someone worse, or killed. There's no escape from this. There might be. The words emerged before complete thought. She looked up. What? There might be escape. I've been considering it all day. If you were to escape. Escape to where? We're in Mississippi. Slave patrols everywhere. I have no papers, no money, no knowledge of northern roads. And I'm a 6-foot-tall black woman, hardly inconspicuous. I'd be caught within a day and sold south, probably to a Louisiana sugar plantation, where I'd be worked to death within years. What if you had papers? What if you had money? What if you had someone traveling with you who could deflect suspicion? She stared. Master Thomas, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting. I took deep breath, I'm suggesting perhaps we both leave together. We go north. I have money. My mother left me a trust fund I can access. Not a fortune, but sufficient for starting somewhere. I can forge travel passes in my father's handwriting. We take a wagon and supplies and simply go. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Master Thomas, if we're caught, do you comprehend what would happen? You'd be imprisoned for slave theft. I'd be killed. They don't merely whip runaway slaves in Mississippi. They make examples. Public hanging, sometimes worse. I know. But if we succeed, if we somehow reach the north, then what? You'd be throwing away everything, your inheritance, social position, family name. You'd be poor, an outcast. And for what? To help one slave escape when your father owns 300? It was the fundamental question, and I lacked good answer except truth, because I can't save 300 people. But perhaps I can save one. Perhaps I can prevent one evil occurrence, and perhaps that's superior to doing nothing. Why me? You don't even know me. Because you're the one my father plans to harm. Because I can't stop him from perpetuating slavery, but I can attempt preventing him from breeding you like an animal. And because I hesitated, because I think perhaps we both need escape, you from slavery, me from a life of complicity in a system I'm realizing I cannot morally accept. Delilah studied me with those intelligent eyes, trained to conceal intelligence. You genuinely mean this? Yes. You'd sacrifice everything to help me escape. Yes. Even though you barely know me. Even though I'm merely one slave among millions. Even though it might not create real difference in the grand scheme. Yes. Because it would create difference for you. And currently that feels like the only thing I can actually control. She remained silent considerably. Outside, other enslaved people moved about, preparing evening meals, settling for the night. Sunset had fully arrived, the cabin illuminated only by faint moonlight through the window. Finally, Delilah spoke. If we do this, and I'm not agreeing yet, merely saying if, we'd need to be intelligent. Careful planning. The judge has connections everywhere in Mississippi. He'd send people after us. I know. And we'd need to move quickly. If he's planning to bring in a male slave for breeding, that could occur any day. When would you want to leave? Give me 2 days for consideration. To prepare what little I have, to say goodbye to people in ways not arousing suspicion. She stood. Master Thomas, I don't fully comprehend why you're doing this. Part of me suspects this is some trap or cruel joke. Yet if you're sincere, if you genuinely mean to help me escape, then I'll take that chance because you're right. What your father's planning is worse than running's risk. I'm sincere, I swear it. Then we leave in 2 days. Thursday night after everyone's asleep. Meet me at the stable at midnight. Bring money, supplies, and those forged travel passes. I'll bring what little I have. I nodded. Thursday night. Midnight. She walked to the cabin door, opened it, then turned back. Master Thomas? Thomas, if we do this, if we reach the north, what then? What do you expect from me? Nothing. I expect nothing except your freedom. What you do with that freedom is entirely your choice. You're not doing this expecting me to be grateful in certain ways, expecting me to be your mistress or companion or... No, absolutely not. I'm doing this because it's right, or at least less wrong than doing nothing. That's all. She studied me another moment, then nodded. Thursday night. Don't be late, and don't change your mind. I left the quarters and walked back to the mansion in darkness, heart pounding. What had I just agreed to? I was planning to steal my father's property. Because that's what Delilah was in law's eyes, property, and flee north with her. If caught, I'd be imprisoned. Delilah would likely be killed. But if we succeeded, one person would be free. One woman wouldn't be forced into the breeding scheme my father had designed. It wasn't world-saving. It wasn't slavery ending. Yet it was something. The subsequent 2 days were agony. I avoided my father as much as possible, taking meals in my room, claiming illness. He didn't press. We remained angry with each other, and he likely assumed I needed time accepting his plan. I used those 2 days preparing. I visited the Natchez Bank and withdrew nearly all my trust fund, $800, a substantial sum. I packed a bag with clothes, books, necessities. I studied Mississippi maps and northern roads. I practiced my father's signature on travel passes, perfecting loops and flourishes. I also composed letters, one to my father explaining my departure, one to Dr. Harrison thanking him for professional care, one to the few friends I'd had over the years, saying goodbye. The letter to my father proved most difficult. "Father, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm leaving Mississippi permanently. I recognize this will anger, disappoint, perhaps hurt you. For that, I'm sorry. Yet I cannot participate in your plan for Delilah. I cannot involve myself in a scheme treating human beings as breeding stock. You raised me valuing education, reason, moral principle. The education you provided has led me to conclusions you'll dislike. Slavery is evil, and our participation in it is wrong. I'm not requesting understanding or approval. I'm simply informing you of my choice. The Callahan line may conclude with me, but it will conclude with whatever dignity I can salvage, rather than continue through the moral bankruptcy of your breeding scheme. I hope someday you'll understand. Your son, Thomas." I sealed the letter and left it on my desk. Thursday night arrived. I couldn't eat dinner. I lay in bed fully clothed, listening to the house settle into sleep. My father retired around 1000. Servants finished evening duties by 1100. By 11:30, the mansion was silent. At 1:45, I grabbed my bag, crept downstairs, slipped out through the kitchen door. The stable was dark, lit only by moonlight filtering through wall gaps. I hitched one of the smaller wagons, a two-horse rig used for local travel. I loaded my bag, some food stolen from the kitchen, blankets, a canteen of water. At exactly midnight, Delilah appeared. She carried a small bundle, everything she owned. Probably some clothes, perhaps few personal items. That was it. 24 years of existence reduced to one small bundle. "You came?" she said quietly. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I wasn't certain. Part of me thought this was all dream or trick. "It's neither. Are you ready?" She looked back at the quarters, visible in distance. "As ready as I'll ever be." We climbed into the wagon. I took the reins. I'd driven wagons before, though infrequently. Delilah sat beside me, bundle in her lap. "Where are we going?" she asked as we started moving. "Northeast initially. We'll avoid Natchez. Too many people who know me. We'll head toward Vicksburg, then into Tennessee. From there, we'll work toward Ohio. Cincinnati has a large free black community. We can disappear there. That's at least 400 miles. Closer to 500. It'll take 2 weeks, perhaps more. We'll travel mostly at night. Rest during days in wooded areas off main roads. You've thought this through." I had 2 days. I did my best. We rode silently for a while. The plantation fell away behind us, and soon we were on the main road heading northeast. The night was clear, moon bright enough for visibility. Every sound accelerated my heart. Was that a patrol? Was that someone following? Yet it was merely wind, animals, normal Mississippi night sounds. After an hour, Delilah spoke again. "Thomas, can I call you Thomas?" "Of course. We're not master and slave anymore. We're simply two people attempting to reach the north." "Thomas, I need to ask you something honestly. Why are you genuinely doing this? And I don't want the noble answer about preventing one evil. I want the real reason." I considered as the horses plodded onward. The real reason. I think I've spent my entire life being told I'm defective. That I'm less than a real man because my body doesn't function properly. That I'm worthless because I can't produce hairs. And I've internalized that. I've believed it. I don't see what that has to do with helping me. My father's plan would have used you the same way society has used me. Reduced to reproductive function, treated as valuable only for what you could produce. And I realized I couldn't participate in doing to someone else what's been done to me. Does that make sense? "Yes," she said quietly. "It makes perfect sense." We traveled through night into dawn. As sunrise approached, we pulled off the road into a grove of trees. I unhitched the horses, letting them graze. Delilah and I ate some food. I'd brought bread, cheese, dried meat. We should sleep in shifts, Delilah said. Take turns keeping watch in case anyone comes. You should sleep first. You worried all day yesterday while I just worked. All right, wake me in a few hours. She lay on a blanket and was asleep almost instantly. I watched her a moment, this woman I barely knew, for whom I was risking everything to help escape. She looked younger in sleep, less guarded. The intelligence she normally concealed was visible in her peaceful facial lines. What had I done? I'd thrown away my entire life on impulse to save one person from one specific evil. It was irrational, possibly foolish, definitely dangerous. Yet it was also the first time in my life I'd felt like I was actually doing something that mattered. Over the next 13 days, we progressed slowly northward. We traveled nights, slept days, avoided towns when possible. I used forged travel passes 3 times when stopped by patrols or passing through checkpoints. Each time my heart raced as patrol officers examined documents. Says here you're traveling on Judge Callahan's business, escorting his property to Vicksburg for sale. That's correct, officer. The judge needs to liquidate some assets, and Delilah here is prime stock, should fetch good price. And why is the judge's son handling this instead of an overseer? A father wanted me learning the business. Can't run a plantation without understanding all aspects. The officer would return papers, wave us through. Each time I'd maintain calm expression until out of sight, then nearly collapse with relief. Delilah proved remarkable during the journey. She was stronger than me, more capable, more resourceful. When a wheel loosened, she fixed it. When we needed to ford a stream, she waded in first to check depth. When food ran low, she knew which plants were edible and how to set rabbit snares. Where did you learn all this? I asked one night as we ate rabbit she'd caught and cooked. You learn things when you're enslaved. You pay attention to everything, because knowledge might mean survival or death. I watched men fix wagons. I learned plants from women who gathered herbs. I learned hunting from my father before he was sold away when I was 10. I'm sorry about your father. Don't be sorry, just keep moving north. We talked during those long travel nights. Really talked, in ways I'd never talked with anyone. Delilah told me about her life. Born on Alabama plantation, sold to my father at 15, 9 years of field work that should have broken her but didn't. She told me about freedom dreams she'd barely allowed herself. About constant vigilance required for slavery survival. About watching friends sold away, sisters raped by overseers, mothers separated from children. I told her about my life isolation of being sickly and strange, education that set me apart, loneliness of wealth without genuine friendship, shame of being labeled defective, growing realization that my comfortable existence was built on others' suffering. You're not defective, she said one night. You're different. There's distinction. Society doesn't see it that way. Society's wrong about many things. Wrong about slavery, wrong about women, wrong about you. By the time we crossed into Tennessee, something had shifted between us. We weren't master and former slave anymore. We weren't even merely traveling companions. We were 2 people who'd begun genuinely caring about each other. Delilah first voiced it. We'd stopped to rest in an abandoned barn, rain pounding outside, deciding to wait out the storm. Thomas, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When we reach the north, when I'm